episode 4. So, we can start off like this week's discussion about some of the ongoing drama that 2022 has allowed to bleed over to 2023. I heard this funny this quote on Twitter that said that 2022 doesn't actually know that it's over yet, and it's
No,
bleeding
for
into
real.
2023, and we just need a clean break so we can just start afresh this year. But it does seem like there is one potential large fallout from all of the meltdowns and cascading bankruptcies that we saw last year, and that's the DGI Gemini situation. Are you following that very closely? I only sort of dug into it only today. Like I'm like, all right, let me just actually figure out what the hell's going on here. But are you following that closely at all? Do you have a sense of where that's headed?
I want to say I'm following it super closely. I definitely know the bulletin points. There's evidence now that Gemini, for lack of a better word, with their class action lawsuit, they've been insolvent for over a year. They gave, what is it, DGI? They gave them something just south of $1 billion, and then there was they had done it years prior, and then they had done something which I don't know if you could legally say it was similar to the FTX thing, but via their just terms of service that their users sign. Apparently, what the users signed and then what they did don't line up. So obviously, there's the class action lawsuit with that. And then I know there's some other companies that are slightly exposed, but obviously Gemini is like one of the blue chips in the space. So that's kind of my cliff notes on it. I don't know what other details I might have missed there that you dug up in the last day or so.
Well, so it's a little bit confusing because there's three sort of entities, but two of the entities is Gemini and Genesis, and so these sort of you can easily conflate them. Even I had to like figure out like which is which again. So Gemini is the Winklevi exchange, and what they did is they had a product called Gemini Earn. And if you deposited crypto in that particular part of the exchange, it's not all the exchange, it's only the Gemini Earn program, then you could get 7% or 8% APR on crypto or their stable coins as well. And so the way that they were able to earn that 7, 8% or whatever it was, and I remember one time it was as high as 9%, was that they took that money and they just lent it to somebody else who was also giving them like a high interest rate, right? And the institution that they lent it to was Genesis. So Gemini took all the Gemini earned money and they just gave it to Genesis. And Genesis says, okay, we're just going to give you, basically interest on all of this payments. And so what Genesis did is that they kind of just gave it to DGI. So they just sort of, I think, passed it on to DGI, and DGI, of course, as well. We're just going to go ahead and invest this money, and make it, turn it into more money, which obviously in a bull market works flawlessly, of course, especially in the bull market of 2021. You basically just needed to be a monkey on a keyboard, and you could make money in 2021, right? And so DGI said, well, this whole making money with crypto stuff is really easy. Just give us your customer money via the subsidiary of Genesis, and we will just go on to invest this money. And one of the things that I think they used the money for is they gave some of it to Three Arrows Capital. And we all know sort of what happened there because of the Luna catastrophe. Three Arrows Capital went under, and then suddenly Genesis or DGI lost a lot of money as well. And then I think they instructed Genesis to just stop withdrawals. They're like, listen, if you owe anybody money, just don't pay them back just now. We're gonna figure it out later or whatever. And so I think that's sort of where all of that is sort of conflated. So what Barry Silbert, who owns DGI, or is it the DG Crypto? What is it again? What is it? DG? It's not DGI. It's Digital Crypto Currency Group. I even forget the name of it. Barry Silbert's outfit, right? He apparently is trying to insulate DCG. I think it's called DCG, right? He's trying to isolate DCG from this fallout. He's like, well, Genesis is some other company that we happen to own, but we are siloed away. Their debts are not our debts. Genesis owes money, but that's Genesis. That's not our group, right? The parent company. And I think that's where all of this stuff was trying to be hashed out. And then the other day, I think it was Cameron Winklevoss did an open letter on Twitter because, apparently everyone in crypto is just a child, and the only way that business gets done is on Twitter. And so he sent an open letter to Barry, basically calling him a artist. I mean, he didn't exactly say con artist, but he didn't say flattering things either. It was basically these two blue chip companies, and I think Gemini is considered to be sort of like a blue chip, highly reliable. It had a great reputation. And of course, Barry Silbert is the same. He's a blue chip name as well. These two blue chip people are now at loggerheads, and it's probably going to result in a lawsuit. So it just makes the whole industry look terrible. You could say, well, FTX is, just like in retrospect, a scam artist, a criminal, and all this other stuff. But, Barry Silbert is a established name, and, the Winklevi twins also are, well-known entities as well. They were, no, they've been around for a long time also. No one really considered them scammers. They were smart enough to buy Bitcoin when it was like $7, right? And they bought a lot back then. So they have this reputation as being very smart people. And now these two very smart, people, the Winklevi twins and Barry Silbert, are at loggerheads with each other, and it's embarrassing for the industry. It's an embarrassment, I think.
It's a weird one where it is embarrassing, but also uh, it's hard to tell if like the first domino was Bitcoin rejecting again from 60K, if it was Three Arrows Capital, if FTX was the crescendo. But it's I remember saying this like about probably 3 or 4 months ago at the meetup. It's you'll know when we've kind of bottomed out when you like think like, oh, for the last 90 calendar days nothing's happened, because FTX seems like forever ago, and it's like maybe what, a calendar month ago, maybe 6 weeks, and then
It was
this
like
happens.
2 months. It's just 2 months ago.
Well, I mean, but it feels like forever ago, because like a week in crypto feels like a month in just in day to day life. But it's a weird one, and that's the thing too. When I was kind of, not to like bring this up from the last episode, but I was saying a big issue in this space that hopefully it's not going to happen overnight, but we can stop doing legacy financial rooting and then wonder why we get legacy financial apples. Like for
Yeah, yeah.
example, in 2008, one of the big kicker was AIG, which was like the insurance of the insurance banks for Wall Street. They were one of the first things to get bailed out, because same thing everyone saw. If AIG goes under, everyone else is going to go running for money, and then you basically get a Mad Max. And not saying like this is happening right now in crypto, but same thing. We just had an exuberant run up, and then with all the COVID money, all the PPP, just money falling out of a helicopter, we bounced off 60K twice, and it's like no one knows where all the just regular money went from COVID, and then you put in the black box, unfortunately, which is crypto at the moment. Don't be surprised. I mean, what would you say? We've probably conservatively been in a bear market, at least for crypto calendar year. It wouldn't surprise me if just one or two more companies fall out, because in my opinion, when the 2017 bull market in crypto popped and we started the bear market in 2018, I would say it was probably until about March or April of 2019. That's when we kind of started the run up again, which got deflated a little bit because of the March 2020 COVID thing. But that was about an 18-month gap, in my opinion. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if what we're sitting at now, the 4th of January, maybe March, if we have like one more little let's just call this escapade. If we have one more, and then maybe you can make a conservative argument that things are quiet right now for a bear market. But yeah, I mean, to add on to your said, it is embarrassing for the space. But after the last 12 months, is it really any more kicking us while we're down? This is like what, the fifth, sixth major blow up, or just major scandal, for lack of a better word, involving an exchange. So it's unfortunate, but I remember when I saw the same post you're talking about by Cameron on Twitter, and I was
Mhm.
just like, oh, that's cool, and I just kept going, because it's kind of like another day, another dollar type of thing. So that's I guess my short TED talk, just off the cusp, just opinion on it. It's unfortunate, but again, it's like this is the sixth, seventh thing in the last 12 months, so it's like kind of keep it moving.
Yeah, one of the things that gives me a little bit of solace is that it's not just the crypto industry that's going through such severe times, right? So you have Facebook that's down by what, 70%, that's like a colossal failure,
Yeah.
right? I mean Bitcoin is down by I think a little less than that, right? And who would have thought just a few years ago that something like Facebook would lose its trillion-dollar valuation and go down 70%, right? And it's a company that's actually making money, right? So it's not even like it's unprofitable. It's actually making money, and investors are freaking out because it's just making less money, less profit than it used to be making, right? So that's down by quite a lot. Amazon is down 50%, Google is down about 50%, and like Snapchat, right, which is like a globally used an app. It's very famous. It's in vogue still. That has lost it. Can you like guess how much Snapchat has lost from peak value about a year ago? Over a year ago now,
Um, the dollar amount I
percentage
couldn't
wise.
tell
No, no,
you.
percentage wise.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if it was over 75, 80%. Is it like
90,
90?
90.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's
and
like a public mainstream popular company, right? And it's lost 90%. So, is crypto like so, or the crypto industry so much more degenerate than just the regular financial industry? Because it seemed like there was a lot of gambling going on there too. But those companies are probably just a bit more transparent, and so the blowouts are not that severe. One good thing you could say about it is that what, let all of these over leveraged companies go bankrupt. Bitcoin is has been chugging along just fine. It's still working perfectly fine. It's like Facebook with a good product, right? I mean, not the saying Facebook is a good product, but it's like the product is still working as advertised, right? It's been advertised to be a decentralized money, and it still is. So if Bitcoin survives all of this, and I think it will eventually, then it will be stronger for it because it will have flushed out all of this sort of garbage that entered the space in the last 2 years.
yeah, I guess a follow up question for you with that. Like personally, like I assume you're aware of this. I know we talk about this a lot at the meetups that there's like the price and the valuation of something, and it's been obvious for the last 10 plus years is this macro bull market. We kind of just wrapped it up because COVID popped that balloon. Um, the 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 demand or the price for a company stock is there's almost zero correlation or very little evidence that, like, for example, let's just say Facebook's stock goes up 5% tomorrow. A lot of times that happens and the company hasn't launched anything new. They haven't gotten anyone well respected on the board. They haven't done a new product launch. And like, for example, years ago when that, remember, Pokemon Go was blowing up,
Mm.
Nintendo, I think, around the same time was having a conference somewhere, and they were doing something to some shareholders or whatever, and they just said, hey, we just had to clarify this, even though everyone should know this. The Pokemon Go game, I don't think they legally own the rights to it or whatever. They're like, we don't run this, blah blah blah. And the next day their stock dropped like 10%. It's like, well, why did it drop? Because investors should have known that. So I guess my long-winded point with this
Mm.
is, you just said, like, the Teslas of the world, a lot of the FANG stocks, the blue chips, Snapchat, companies that make real things, they're down over 70%. Um, it, do you realize that, or like for you personally, do you at least acknowledge that 70% is more or less just market fear and it doesn't actually have a correlation effect or like reflection on the company? And then also, like, with that, do you think, like we were saying, we stuff was overvalued so long that instead of maybe it being down 70%, it's actually at its accurate valuation where it should have been, 10 years ago? Like, I know that was kind of a lot right there, but what's your take on all
No,
that?
I think that's a really good way of framing it, right? Is that the price of something is sort of directly proportional to its value. But if you also start fucking around with the money supply, if you start printing a whole lot of money, that money needs to find a home, and then ultimately you just get an everything bubble, right? And so I think Bitcoin is probably undervalued with respect to its sort of true value, as a decentralized monetary network. You could probably say the exact same thing about Coinbase. You could say the same thing about Google and Facebook, Snapchat. I think a lot of fear is sort of resulting in a severe correction. But the market can be irrational for a very long time to the upside or to the downside, right? It was definitely irrational to the upside in 2020 and 2021, and it could be irrational to the downside for another year or so if the recession that we're all been promised is coming actually comes, and inflation doesn't go down, and all this other stuff happens, right? Uh, one of the things that I really liked seeing the other day, Mark Andreessen of AZ3 A16Z tweeted the other day that absolutely nobody knows what is going to happen with stocks and bonds and crypto and companies and investments at all in the next 2020, in the next year. Absolutely no one has any clue whatsoever. All the experts, who are promising a recession, all the experts that are promising that we're, past peak inflation and everything's going to only start to go up from here. It looks like everyone is just guessing. And if you ever see somebody on CNBC who says, well, the stocks are all going to crash and there's a market, doom and gloom, and there's a catastrophe happening, I bet you that person on CNBC has a short position. And if you have someone else who comes up and says, "Hey, the market's going to go up, and it's going to be a great year, and everyone's just overreacting," I bet that person is long something, and that just means that they're on CNBC talking their book. So you can't really trust them to be intellectually honest because, it's a game. This is just a media game. It's not like CNBC is some great reliable business news source, right? I mean, Jim
Oh
Cramer's on
no,
there for
they're
God's
like
sake.
Fox, CNN, yeah, with Jim Cramer. Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's all sort of theater, and they just drag out people who start making pronouncements about what's going to happen. And I think one of the things I've learned is nobody has any idea what 2023 is going to bring. I think you just sort of, prepare yourself for a potential prolonged bear market, and then do what is most, do what makes you most anti-fragile, and just sort of, grind it out. Just wait until this is all over. It may take another year. It may take, 2 years. But so far, I haven't seen anything change the fundamental sort of use case, value proposition of, Bitcoin, right? One of the other things, though, that I think we learned from 2021 is the preponderance of these sort of VC Ponzi coins, right? There's a lot of people who called out shit coins, and I hate using that term because it's such a loaded term. It's a lazy term as well. There's projects that I like that are routinely called shit coins, and it's at times it's intellectually dishonest. I think people can have like a high degree of suspicion that this is all VC funded shitcoinery and this is all exit liquidity scam stuff. But there was a lot of that in 2021. There was a lot of like these exit scams. Like I think Luna was a good example, right? You had David Sachs coming on bragging about how much Luna that he had, through Multicoin Capital. And you had a lot of people, even in, FTT was another good example of, FTX token as well. I wonder to what extent Binance is up to, just sort of using crypto, using their customers as exit liquidity for BNB. I mean, BNB has a really weirdly high valuation for a chain that I haven't actually personally met anyone who actually uses, right? And it's I do run into crypto people on a fairly routine basis. No one ever says, "Oh man, that BNB chain, right? That's just the best." So I don't know to what extent that's happening. Hopefully, Binance doesn't drop. But there was a lot of you know VC funded exit scams that we saw. Some of them got really high valuations. I would put Luna in that category for sure. I think a lot of VCs dumped on retail when that happened. And so, going forward, I think I'm going to be very suspicious about any sort of like new project that comes up. I'm like, all right, who's invested here? If there's a lot of VCs, I'm not interested because they're just going to dump on retail as soon as, the
Mm-hmm.
market, picks up again. So I think that was an important lesson. You should, invest on fundamentals, right? I mean, does the fundamentals of the project make sense? If they do, then I think that makes sense. But you shouldn't invest because, oh, Mark Cuban is in this thing, or like so and so, pick your favorite entrepreneur who comes on Instagram and TV is backing up this thing. Even Anthony Popliano decided the other day, he put out a tweet saying that he is going to stop taking um, ad money. He's going to stop having advertisers on his channel, right? Because some of the companies that he was promoting actually didn't do very well. So I
Yeah.
think that's going to probably be a culture shift in 2023. I hope at least it will be.
Yeah, I guess first thing real quick is I definitely hear it on the shitcoin thing, but Lynn Alden uses it a lot. So I guess as someone as a financial titan as herself uses it, there's some place for it. But no, I hear you. It's like people just call random stuff shitcoins. It's like, well, what was it an honest good attempt in breaking news like innovation? 99 things fail, one succeeds, or was it like the Lunas of the world, blah blah blah. That line's really gray, but I mean, yeah, I guess just to segue back to what you were saying, I never was a fanboy of them, but definitely the Kevin O'Leary's, the Mark Cubans. A couple years ago, I was like, oh, they're on Shark Tank. They own these companies. One of them owns an NBA team, for God's sake. Like, these guys have to be smart, and they
Right,
put their
right.
name behind something, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember, like, over COVID, there's nothing going on. So, the Twitter spaces were popping off. And Kevin O'Leary wasn't as bad. But I remember there was a couple I saw with Mark Cuban. I was just like how is this guy a billionaire? Just the stuff he was saying, you could tell he just someone like it's almost like Nancy Pelosi before a speech. Some secretary just gave him a note card like 5 minutes before it, and he went on, and it's just like he would just say stuff, and it's like that's wrong, that's wrong, that's like not even and you're like he got most of his wealth in tech. So yeah, I definitely
Mm,
hear you. Where like the one of the big takeaways for me was just even someone like Lynn Alden, I try not to blindly follow her because she's very humble and she corrects herself, which is why I think so many people follow her. But even then, she says it, but you have to do it. She's like, don't believe a goddamn thing I say. Whatever I say, write it down. Go find 4 or 5 sources that support what I say, and then, like you said, if one thing supports it, well, who wrote it? Was it someone that's a gold bug, a Bitcoin person? Blah blah blah. But it's yeah, definitely that's one thing. Like even earlier today, I was watching a podcast or the Peter Schiff podcast, and I was catching up on the Lynn Alden one, and I just took some notes down because I'm like, I know both these people probably wouldn't lie to me, but it's like you just said, if anything, the last year told me it's you can only trust experts until you can't. And then yeah, I guess like last thing you talked about, did you see the it's about a 5 minute video Pomp put up on his YouTube apologizing? Um, One thing that did disturb me when he made that is, yeah, like he put up FTX and stuff, but I used to watch a lot of his stuff like 2 or 3 years ago when he was first blowing up, and then
mm,
now it's like besides Lynn Alden stuff, I don't have a lot of spare time to keep up with things. But he always seemed like a genuine guy to me, and his channel blew up really quick. And him and his brother is in Miami, and I was down in Miami for a while. It's a cool city. It's a loud city. You can kind of lose your head if you don't keep yourself grounded on a day-to-day basis. But it was really disturbing when he posted the video in the comments, just the amount of people who were kind of teasing him for almost apologizing. And that's like one thing kind of want your take on. It's definitely not new to crypto, but especially social media the last 5 plus years. Everyone's constantly trying to get someone or pull an I gotcha or just admit you're wrong. But then someone like Pomp goes, hey guys, I didn't mean to hurt anyone, but I partnered with companies. Some people lost money, and I'm sorry for that. And he said for about the next plus calendar plus year, he's probably not doing any sponsorships, so he wants to learn from this. But a lot of people were almost making fun of him for acknowledging that he kind of fucked up, for lack of a better word. And I just found that really boggling, where it's like one of the first stepping stones to get us to the 24, 25 bull market is people admitting where they messed up. He just
mm.
humbly said, hey guys, I screwed up. I'm going to try to learn from this. I'm really sorry. And it's just, again, it's Twitter. You can't take it with, take it with a grain of salt. But like the first 2 pages were just like people with certified crypto check marks just making fun of him, calling him a scammer. He needs to be locked up and stuff. And I was just like, I get where they're coming from, but it's like besides Pomp, who can you think of in the crypto space who's admitted they're wrong in the last year? I can't name one person. But
Definitely
that's my
not
point. It's just
SBF.
exactly, and it was just so disturbing just to see I mean, and he was in his room. It was a bad angle. You could tell he was just being
Mm,
serious, but it
yeah.
was just the first 2 pages were like Bitcoin maxi guys just like calling him a terrorist and a traitor, and he deserves to be in jail, and he's stupid. And I just found that really disturbing. But it was, yeah, I don't know, it's just funny. It was like we were saying, like the last year proved that you can't blindly trust anybody. No one knows shit. And then Pomp comes out, apologizes, like the only person in the last year to apologize, and he's just like pulled through the rails. So I found that really interesting the last week. Besides the whole Gemini thing popping off too.
Well, yeah, I see your point. I think you're right there. I myself have sort of this, I think, negative reaction to Pomp. I can't like put my finger on why. I used to listen to him as well. I don't do that much anymore. I think he's still trying to like figure himself out, and he's sort of defining who he is, like what he's doing in this space, right? Because he is kind of a Bitcoin maxi, right? I mean, it's not like he's out there shilling Solana or whatever, right? It's he's mostly just a Bitcoin guy, and the companies that he was promoting, I think BlockFi was the one that I remember that he promoted quite heavily, and that was basically almost like a custodial service that would also give you like interest, if you custody with them. So, and I personally know people who know people in BlockFi, and BlockFi has always been regarded as a legit company run by serious people who are really sincere, right? So I had heard from multiple people that BlockFi was a legit company, and where they went, bad is they had a lot of their money with FTX, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could argue, like, to what extent is it a blameworthy on Pomp, right? That he was promoting a company that then leveraged, with FTX, and FTX duped a lot of people, a lot of, I mean, like, Andreessen Horowitz got duped, right? They had money in FTX as well. So I think SBF did a lot of damage by being such a duplicitous asshole. And he's still, I think, triggering a lot of people. I don't know if you saw a video of him, like, going into New York, at the court here today. I think yesterday he was being led by security personnel. He was just sort of wearing a backpack and chewing gum as he was walking into the court. It just looked like he couldn't care less about what the hell was going on. So I think, it's unfortunate that the bubble that the, printing created in 2021 just led to some really, really bad actors entering this space and taking a lot of people for a ride. And a large part of that was because the space was unregulated and was the Wild West, right? Because crypto is borderless. You could set up in, any country you wanted in the world and still sell to US customers, right? Because there was no borders involved. So you'd mint a token. I mean, who knows, like, who created Shiba Inu, right? And where are those people? Or who created, name your token, right? They could be anywhere in the world. So, yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic to Pomp. I agree with you that it is good that he said, listen, I think I need to change my approach here and do things differently. And yeah, it is a shame. I think a lot of people are hurting. There's a lot of pain in this space. And so maybe that's where some of
Yeah.
that negative energy is coming from. Uh, I have a friend personally who lost money on BlockFi. And, I think I might even mention BlockFi to him, right? Because I put money myself in BlockFi. I put some Bitcoin in there. But as soon as I think Luna collapsed, I just took everything out of everywhere. Like I just self custodied the shit out of everything. And so, and I think my friend wasn't following crypto that closely, and so he didn't do that. And unfortunately, he lost his Bitcoin. So I personally know someone who's been affected by BlockFi, and it is unfortunate. But I get your point about, like, it is honorable of him to have admitted that, listen, I messed up, and I'm gonna try to do things differently. I think Pomp is still trying to figure himself out. Uh, maybe being in Miami has something to do. Maybe he needs to move to Austin. Come to our
Yeah.
crypto meetup group.
Yeah. Well, I know he has his wife Polania. I'm forgetting her name, but I think they have a daughter now or something that's 1 2. Which moving to Austin's not end of the world, but it's not like when I just did it. I just sold what I sold and
Yeah,
just drove my car over
yeah.
here.
No, I was
But
just kidding about that.
I
He probably has business interests in Miami, and probably settled
yeah.
there now. So
Yeah. When I just bring that up to kind of like circle back to when the first statements you said, it's how it was just good poster child, like New York Times headliner, where you just have the CEO, like, of Gemini just doing a screenshot. You could, for lack of a better word, just a verbal threat to another, blue chip business guy on Twitter. And it's weird. I don't know how much you follow like Kobe or Udiverse on Twitter. Sometimes they will post threads where it's like this could like legit be like almost nominated for a Nobel Prize or using like a paper as like a reference, and then like the next day they'll just be doing nothing but sending like turd memes to each other. And like some days I'm like, man, why are we not a hyper Bitcoinization? And then you just go on Twitter and see like the shit posting, or like, and Kobe and Udiverse purposely don't take themselves serious, but I don't know how many interviews I've seen of them. They're really, really smart dudes just for being average guys. Just their knowledge in the space, their time in the space, just the way they view stuff. A lot of the stuff, like I said, my wannabe functional Bitcoin maxi stuff. I get a lot of it actually from Udi, because one thing he gets really frustrated at when he goes, especially a lot of these bit dev things, he'll just say, just for example, what do you guys all think of like Sushi Swap? In a room of like 100 bit devs, 2 of them will put their hands up, and that's a problem. It's like the best way to beat your competition is to learn from it, and not that like Bitcoin's in a competition with like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, but if you want to make Bitcoin better, if you don't even know what the other projects are doing, how you can learn from it, apply it, this, that, and a third, like a lot of the big original, actually like the digital gold book I'm reading, a lot of the original Bitcoin developers were working on their own project between talking with Satoshi, Gavin Andreessen, the Jesse P's of the world. What was failing on their project, they left behind, but what worked, they brought over to Bitcoin, and that was some of the original, just like scaling stuff and the idea with like layer twos and like I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but one of the things that eventually became Segwit and stuff. So it's yeah, I guess just a circle back, it is like one of the I guess it was good, like to end, I guess end the year, or start the year, seeing with Pomp's apology. But to your point, like when I basically got back from Philly, I was catching up on Twitter news. I'm like, all right, let's see if anything's hopeful. And like the first post I see is just Cameron Winklevoss just sitting on the stoop publicly. I'm like, yeah, 2023 is a bear market. We don't deserve 60K Bitcoin. So I'm with you on that one. But again, it's like another day in crypto, man. It's like I saw it and just kept moving because it is what it is.
To that end, I wonder to what extent the sort of pugilistic culture of crypto, the sort of in your face, just, bit slapping attitude that, people in crypto seem to have. Is that just a problem of Twitter because, a lot of them just seem to live in Twitter? Or is it just inherent to the space? Because we see all sorts of people in crypto, in our meetups in Austin. We've talked to so many, and I have yet to meet like one person who was like a, a noxious human being or just like obnoxious or just, argumentative for no reason at all. Most people there are like just, very pleasant to chat with, and then you go on Twitter and it's just like they're slinging shit at each other all the time. So if Elon does get around to like fixing Twitter, whatever the hell that means, and there's less of this toxic negative energy floating around there, I wonder if the culture of the folks in crypto will change. I think, a better question to ask, and, like, tell me what you think about this. Do you think the culture should change, or does it have to change in order to reach mass adoption?
It I guess like I hate to ask a question to question, but kind of I guess it's like which culture, because like for example, a lot of people hate on the Bitcoin maxis because like for example they say everything's a shitcoin, everything's a
Mm.
scam. But bringing back Kobe and Udiverse, Udi he's not big on the word shitcoin either. He's like, tell me what you're complaining about, tell me if it's a scam, and then explain the scam. So it's like a three-step thing. You can't just say like, oh, Ethereum's a shitcoin, it's a scam. Like no it's not. Or even if it was, like explain your thought process. But part of the reason like he became a Bitcoin maxis, he remembers like when Leaf Coin and Filecoin and all this other stuff came out, what would be now $100,000, $200,000, he lost in that shit. Because same thing too, the space was growing, and in hindsight, a lot of it was a scam. But some of the projects were trying to do real stuff. But again, breaking news, like innovation, 99 things fail. That's just the name of the game. So I think it goes kind of back to like I do this a lot too. Like I try not to use the word like hyper Bitcoinization anymore, or like Bitcoin adoption, or like metaverse Web3, because I feel like a lot of that is buzzwords people use, and then you ask them to explain it, and it's like a pancake. But I guess to like answer your question, it's like, do we need to change? I think like at least in my case, for example, more of the Bitcoin maxi camp encouraging people to, let's just say round number, to any point in time have 70+% of their stack in Bitcoin should still kind of be a goal. But you explain to them why. You show them like the Dogecoins of the world, the BitConnects, the Solanas, the Terras, etc. And you show them like this shit can rug pull on you like FTX in 2 seconds. Like it's not going to be a 2 month warning bell. You're just going to wake up one day and your shit's gone. You can't get it. But you actually educate them on that instead of saying, oh, Ethereum's a shitcoin, Litecoin's a shitcoin, Cardano's a shitcoin. You explain to them, out of, let's just call this the 10 main DeFi projects right now, maybe two or three of them are going to be here in 10 years. So there's nothing wrong with having 5% of your stack on there, but the 70% should still be in the blue chip Bitcoin, Ethereum stuff. So I think it's still, I think it's still the same end result. It's just polishing our speech, or like at least like for example, out of the Bitcoin maxi guys, like I agree with them on stuff. It's just their delivery. I'm like, people aren't going to listen to you if you're just sounding like a raging asshole, like you said on Twitter. So yeah, I definitely think there's a like a rebranding that needs to go on, but I think the message is still the same. It's just we need to, like a car salesman, we need to work on a smoother delivery, and not even with the Bitcoin maxis. You could apply that to everything, to stable coins, to DeFi, to NFTs, whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's the where the dilemma comes in, right? That's a good response is which part of the toxic cryptocurrency culture am I talking about? Because there's many heads to this Hydra snake here, and there's many like toxic sort of there's the scams that happen all the time. There's the maximalism of the Bitcoin people. There's the proof of work versus proof of stake, mudslinging that's going around all the time. There is the whole energy usage of Bitcoin that's going around all the time. And then there's the whole like, well, we don't like the government. And if you like the government, then you probably, have vaccines for breakfast and, you probably pray to the temple of Dr. Fauci. And then you drag in the
Yeah.
whole politics into it. And then it just turns into a hot soup mess, right? So yeah, I mean it's hard to know which part of the culture needs to be fixed first. If we were to, I think this would be some of one of the goals that I would have for this channel in 2023 is I don't think there's enough content out there, and this is the principal reason that I think me and you both started this channel is I think ordinary people just need to talk to other ordinary people like me and you who are not like raging about things and who just like are pretty calm about things. They think Bitcoin is cool. We're invested in Bitcoin. We believe in it heavily, but we're not in grouping, out grouping people all the time. We don't have an us versus them mentality. And in fact, even in our meetup group, we even say on the meetup thing, like the skeptics are welcome, right? And we've had many skeptics, right? Who've come like, well, you guys are just full of bullshit. Then we'll, I mean, they don't actually say that, but they are skeptical and they come just to learn a little bit more about what's going on. So I think one of the things that we may be helping, at least in terms of the culture, is just exposing the normies, right? The normal people who are not into crypto, exposing them to just people who are just having regular, sober conversations without talking about which, shitcoin, Bitcoin, or sorry, I said shitcoin myself, without like, talking about which NFT project is going to do another 100x and which new crypto thing is going to do 1,000x and how you're going to get rich really fast. In some sense, it's best to have those sort of foundations laid in a bear market where you don't have people entering the market for the wrong reasons, right? If you're interested in Bitcoin now, you're interested in it because if it's like what it is. You're not interested in because the price is going up because it's not, it's going down, right? So this would be a great time to like start talking to people about, why Bitcoin. So if there's anything that, we should try to shift culturally, I think if you're going to start to focus on a message, the best place to start is why Bitcoin. I think that would be sort of the best message. And also do that in a way that doesn't alienate people. Because I've met people, pretty left leaning on the spectrum, friends of mine, because I have friends of all persuasions who have blunt faced told me that they don't believe in Bitcoin, right? And when I ask them why, they talk about the energy usage. And so that's where the conversation immediately goes, and that's where we need to go and talk to people and sort of like go over why that is or isn't a problem with respect to Bitcoin. So I do think that the culture needs to change. I think the culture was definitely perverted by all the helicopter money that landed in the space, not just in crypto, but everywhere, really, right?
No, yeah, macro,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it just landed everywhere. There's like Ponzi's left and right? Um, so yeah, I think it's going to take a while for it to regain its reputation. I mean, it may be another year before people say, okay, listen, all the bad actors are out, and there's a new sort of cycle starting. People will probably be a bit more skeptical now because they've looked at the path and like, well, this could be another Solana, right? This could be another FTX, right? This could be another Luna, or whatever it is, right? So there's a little bit more wisdom, hopefully, that carries the market forward into 2023, 2024. But I definitely think that people in crypto need to present themselves in a bit more of a sober manner than they have been. I think that's like imperative for the industry to grow.
Yeah, I guess to kind of like piggyback off what you said, and then if we want to go on to something else, we can. I don't know if it was just like where I'm at in life right now, or I just moved in the last 2 months of work and life were crazy. But like I said, I went back home to Philly and Maryland the last week, just see friends, family, blah blah blah. And it was weird because like every single day I almost had a crypto conversation that was not a crypto conversation. So like for example, my grandmother picked me up from the airport, so I had to go from Austin, Chicago to Philly. Um, and when I got there, like we're just talking, and first thing, and it was snowing in Philly, so the Schuylkill highways basically shut down. And then she just goes, "Oh, how's your crypto stuff going?" And we're family, so I just give her a ballpark amount, how much I'm down. She's like, "Oh, you don't seem panicked." And then we just started talking about the hockey game that was on that night, and like I told you, I have an aunt and uncle, and I was just talking to them, and same thing. They're like, "How's it going?" And I'm like, "It's down right now, but most of my stuff's still in the profit, and with like on to the next thing." And then when I was back in my hometown, a buddy I used to go to school with, I went out with him, and he's doing well. He was a cop, now he's a linesman, has a house, wife has baby fever. You know, he's kind of doing the American picket dream. And we're just talking about sports games, this, that, and a third. And then he goes, real quick, how's the crypto stuff going? And then same thing, I like vaguely told him how much I was down, and he's like, where do you see everything going in 6 9 months? And I'm still kind of going to die on this hill. I wouldn't be surprised if by May we've at least touched 10K ones. And he kind of jolted. He's like, wow, you're like that pessimistic. I'm like, pessimistic, honest, trying to use past data to partially interpret the future, whatever you want to call it. But I basically told him, and he's like, so what's like your synopsis with this now? And like I've told people this before, I said in 10 years, Bitcoin's going to work or it's not. And it's kind of just like flipping a coin or tossing something to a lake. It's going to float or it's going to sink. It's heads or tails. So it's like, and like we've had this conversation at nauseum. If you just slightly start to do some research about how incompetent New York and these monkeys in DC are, trusting some servers around the world, you know, like hypothetically trusting with your private keys, but trusting them when you punch in your private keys, the nodes and the miners are all going to read it. That really doesn't seem too crazy when you start listening to Lynn Alden, Peter Schiff, just talk about how incompetent the Treasury and the Fed is. So, but yeah, I guess to your point though, like, or I guess the reason I'm bringing this stuff up is even on my Christmas break, I feel like I had like 5 or 4 level-headed conversations with people, and not that like I'm going to be like the sole Rambo on this thing, but I think if we just kind of, like I said, start making that an industry standard, like a self-regulation thing where it's like, even in our group, like we just tell everyone, hey, each week have like one kind of random person, you know, try to have like one 90-second 3-minute little crypto conversation with them, and then, you know, keep moving on, because you know that's how you kind of plant the seed, get people interested. And same thing, not that we're trying to recruit people, but maybe on their free time you talk to someone at the gym, and then the next day they do some research, and maybe they come back a week later with some questions, and like, and same thing, you're just giving them the tools and resources. But it's way healthier in my opinion for that to occur than, like we said, they go on Twitter and just try to interpret that dog shit pile. So but yeah, it was cool. I had like 4 or 5 like crypto conversations over Christmas break. So hopefully we'll see if any of those seeds plant come this time next year.
So speaking of the incompetent treasury, this is a good way to segue into something that I wanted to talk about a little bit over here. So we can start the question off with central bank digital currency, CBDCs, right? So just off the top of your head, tell me what your impressions are about CBDCs.
I think there's two. Well, I'm first going to go with the Twitter doomsday thing that's kind of pushed around right now. That basically is going to be George Orwell 1984. Big Brother's always watching. You tweet F Trump. You go to the grocery store. Your stuff doesn't work. Blah blah blah. I it's basically going to be like this avalanche effect. It's just going to happen like overnight. Blah blah blah. I'm not that pessimistic about it, but definitely in the by 2030, 2035, I think CBDCs could slowly be something that's transitioned into, and most people don't even notice it. Just how, like, probably most Americans, like when we got off gold, weren't really aware of it, didn't affect their day to day life until 50 years later, inflation hits, blah, blah, blah. But it's something in this space I'm also getting worried about, where I think a lot of the current stablecoin infrastructure in crypto, for lack of a better word, could become state captured, and then that's how we slowly also get to like a big reason I'm not a fan of Ripple. I know it technically wouldn't be a like stable coin, but it could easily become an arm of the state where it becomes a CBDC, and it is control. And if you just tweet F Trump, F Biden, you know, you go to the grocery store, your card doesn't work. You also have a social credit score like they're doing in China, which for obvious reasons isn't good. Um, with that said too, I feel like a lot of people in the space also use a reason I'm like a little hesitant with bashing CBDCs too much is people also use them for examples as why stablecoins should never be a thing. Even though I just said it, but it's like we've talked about this too. There's a lot of use cases for stablecoins for people in South America and Africa right now. They don't need Bitcoin; they need stablecoins to get food, clothes, blah blah blah. So it's one of those things where I think it's inevitable, unfortunately, just with technology and after all the tomfoolery that happened over 2020, with that said, like if we do what we need to internally in the crypto industry, not that we would almost make a black box, but we could give people an option where it's like, hey, this potential 1984 George Orwell, is the venom, your vaccine is Bitcoin and whatever 8, 10 cryptocurrencies make it from now to, let's say, 2035. So I'm not one of those people that's all 1984 about CBDCs, and I don't think we're going to go to like China social credit score like tomorrow, but it's something in the next 10 or 15 years I could see it going a little bit haywire.
Yeah, so I spent a little bit of time thinking about this. So first of all, I completely am sympathetic to people who are suspicious of CBDCs because they can be an instrument of government control. Just like you say the wrong thing and suddenly the money, which is all based in CBDC, just evaporates because you're blacklisted by a overzealous government. So I am completely sympathetic to that, situation. Before CBDCs became super controversial, I think they got proposed a few years ago. But when I first heard about them, I was actually, vaguely excited by the idea of them. I'm like, well, how could this actually be a force for good? And again, I'm not saying that we should have CBDCs, but I want to be the contrarian here, because everyone in crypto is so anti-CBDCs. Let me posit the opposite perspective. So one potential use case, right, is if you have something like COVID happen again, or some catastrophe happen, and people are lose their job, whether because the economy is depressed, or there's a natural calamity, or there's another pandemic, or there's a war, or whatever, pick your calamity that has resulted in a lot of difficulty, and nationally or locally, then the people that are affected let's for example say that there was a hurricane that affected an entire town, right? And you have 5,000 people who all lost their homes. Now the homes would be registered to some people, right? It would be right there would be a mortgage, there'd be or an actual deed. That deed would have a person's name on there. That would probably be identifiable to some sort of identity, like a passport or a driver's license or whatever. And because you can identify who owns the house that was just destroyed, you can also then easily identify the wallet that they use for their to hold their CBDCs. So you could even have an algorithm that says that, okay, if you've lost your home in this region because of a tornado or a hurricane or whatever, the government is going to help bail you out by just depositing the money right into your wallet. And it will know that it's you that lost the house because, well, the house is in your name. So we're just going to go ahead and give you the money. And so that could be completely automated. Whereas right now, the way that bailouts work is that the government just bailouts the company, and then the hope is that the company will keep the economy afloat, and that will help ordinary citizens. That's how it's been working before. But CBDCs also allow for a direct deposit of money to people who are directly affected, and you could even go by the income the person was receiving, right? If they're, they've lost their job and they're running low, and then they apply for aid or whatever, you could just audit their wallet and like, yeah, this guy is really on hard times. Let us go ahead and helicopter some money so they don't become homeless or something. So that's one potential positive use case. Another way of, another way that could be extremely helpful is not just in national, helping people nationally, but you could send a government could help bail out another country that's extremely destitute, that maybe is overrun by drug violence, or also had a national calamity, or just the government collapsed or was attacked by another country. Say for example, if the US was able to send people who lived in the Ukraine CBDC US dollars into their wallet, right? You could just register, right? You could use your sort of GPS location on your phone. So the government would say, well, this person definitely is in Ukraine right now. And, they're using this money to buy groceries, or they're using this money to buy, whatever it is, some necessity, right? Then you would feel a lot better about, the $100 billion that has been sent to Ukraine, which is basically just given over, right, to governments, which are highly corrupt, and given over to defense contractors, which are also highly corrupt, right? Who knows how much of that money is actually going to people who it's going to help. But if you just directly send it to their wallet, it would be a lot more efficient. So that's one of the positive use cases about like CBDC. So I think I'm like you, I'm not 1984 about it. I do recognize it's tremendously dark potential for surveillance and for punitive banning of, monies from a person's wallet because they said the wrong thing. But it's not as if it's all bad, right? And then I think the thing you have to balance is how do you balance the potential security concerns that government control over money brings it with the potential upsides as well. That's sort of a delicate balancing act. Uh, I don't know what your thoughts on that the tension between the good and the bad, or do you even agree that there's good there?
Oh no, there is definitely good. I think this is kind of just like with a lot of other things in crypto and finance. It's kind of the Schrodinger's cat. You only know until you implement it. Like, you know, they didn't know if the $6 trillion helicopter money thing was going to work until you do it. It's I always joke, like,
Mm.
people are like, oh, how do you know if you can squat 300 pounds? You get under a 300-pound bar and you try to squat it. It's a little bit caveman at times, but unfortunately it's how life works. Just with anything, you move somewhere, apply to a job. But I guess it's just a segue back. Yeah, I definitely think it's a balance of the two. I would say right now I would be more 70-30. It could go sour just because, not necessarily even intentful, like purposeful corruption. Is just, again, COVID showed it. It's just, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and there's just so many moving parts and so many monkeys in DC and New York. I just can't see how they couldn't mess it up, just because absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Mhm.
And I guess, like on that thing, one thing to ask you, like, if I talk to some normie friends, I even say CBDC, 9 out of 10, no idea what I'm talking about, and I don't get super nervous, but I'm like, you should at least know when I say CBDC. You're like, oh, digital money, like social credit score. But a lot of people, I guess, because we're in the space, it's a kind of a hot talking point. But a lot of average Joes and friends are just oblivious to it. Let's just take a time frame in the next 10 years, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how, like, whether it's going to be good or bad, but in the next 10 years, what likelihood do you give that CBDCs are going to arrive? Because you can make an argument we're almost there now, because what's it, 90% of our dollars are already digital. So all you'd have to do is, like you said, you get a framework in there, just attach an ID, a sticker to property, houses, people, and you're basically already there. So, like, in the next 10 years, I would put it like 8, 8.5. Not whether it's gonna be good or bad, but like probably by the end of the decade, I wouldn't be surprised if they're like here under the hood. I don't know your take on that.
Well, so I have another thought about that as well. So before I answer that question, let me ask you another question, which is, what are your thoughts about USDC and Circle? Supporter, pro, against, neutral? What do you think?
Real quick, correct me if I'm wrong. Circle is not algorithmic, right? Or they are?
No, 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 no. It's backed one to
No, it's
one.
just
I
straight.
mean,
That's
supposedly.
what I thought. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not super up to date on Circle. USDC, I could be wrong, has been around for about 4 or 5 years. So, Tether's been around for about that same time, if not longer. People have been saying that's a scam since I've been in the space. It's somehow, Tether, not talking about USDC. Tether hasn't blown up, but I mean, USDC is still kicking, and same thing. It's like, how do I word this? It provides a function in the space, but one thing I think could be short or medium to long term problematic for crypto is that the space turns into a stablecoin space. And I think the problem with that is it goes back to '08 in the last 2 years. Uh, Even if it's still pegged 1 to 1, if the underlying asset can be printed and or the code, miners, nodes, validators, whatever you want to call it for each chain, if those can get gerrymandered and you basically get what we have with the Fed, where it's just printed on Burr, that's one thing that would concern me. But again, like we said, there's tons of real day-to-day application for stablecoins in Africa and the South Americas of the world. But like, for example, too, one thing that does have me concerned in the next, let's say, 24 to 36 months, Tether is still kicking right now. And I'd explain this to just some buddies, and even at the meetup, I brought this up a couple times. People go, oh, yeah, Tether's kind of a scam, but big deal. It's only, let's just call it $20 billion. So they would think it's crypto market cap minus 20 billion. That's not how it works.
Yeah, yeah, no.
If you look at the daily volume of the biggest chain out of a month, probably 25 of the days will be Tether. So the biggest daily volume
Yeah.
is Tether. Again, how much of that's gerrymandered, rigged, who knows? But if Tether blows up tomorrow, that is the biggest liquidity in the whole ecosystem. And I mean, to get even super scary, I mean, we could have a crypto haircut 30% like in 1 week. I mean, so it's it's just hard to tell. It's like which stable coins are good and legit, which ones are bad. Because like we said, we thought 6 months ago FTX was a blue chip crypto company, and even Gemini, which was a blue chip company, now they're in a lawsuit. So it's like I said, the day to day utility for people who actually need them. I think it's great. I don't like when some of the Bitcoin maxi guys shit on stable coins. With that said, I could see that if we don't, like I said, properly educate people on it, I could see how that little corner of the space could kind of contagion into other stuff, just with the examples I've given. But USDC is still kicking. To my knowledge, Circle is still kicking. So it's like, you know, hopefully they don't turn to Tether, but it's, only time will tell.
Well, I was asking the question more from a perspective of uh, control and centralization and decentralization, right? So USDC is issued by the company Circle, which is I think it's still a private company, but it is a US based company, and they're the ones who are issuing the USDC. And so even though it's not a CBDC, it is still liable to be captured by regulatory
Yeah.
enforcement. So the US government, the US Department of Justice calls up Circle, and I'm like, well, we have a new list of wallets for you to ban and, just like sort of cross out, right?
Yep.
What they're going to do is say no. They're going to be like, yes, sir.
Yep.
Right away, sir. Just like, I didn't really follow the Twitter files, where apparently the FBI was working, hand in hand with Twitter. But that's exactly what's going to happen with any kind of stablecoin project that's based in the US. And even if it's not based in the US, you don't want to get on the US's bad side, right? So if you're
Oh
based in
no.
whatever, Argentina, right? And you're not going to say, well, fuck you, the US government. I don't actually care what you said. That's not going to work. They're going to start blacklisting, all the tokens that come out of your project, and then just trail them, and any wallet that it gets into will probably be blacklisted or something, right? So so we may not even need a CBDC because the private companies will do the job for
Get
you.
absorbed. Yeah.
It's almost like saying, that there was this very funny Onion video that I saw. This was like 10 years ago or something, right? And the Onion, is basically the satire, the media company, and they had this sort of video clip of this guy giving testimony to the Senate or something, and he was basically from the CIA, and he was just an actor. Obviously, this is just a skit, and the CIA like chief was saying, yeah, we have no idea, but these guys are sharing all the information publicly online, and he was talking about Facebook. It's like, yeah, we don't even have to ask. Like, we know where everyone is at all times because they just publicly, freely shared information online, right? And he was talking about how surprised he was that our surveillance has gotten so much easier ever since Facebook came around. And Facebook, as a private company, basically did the work of surveillance that the U.S. government, used to do before. And in the same way, so a private company like Circle could do the job of censoring money, right? Because that's kind of what they would be doing. They would be censoring people's money and canceling people's money on the behest of the US government. So, we talk about, decentralization on this channel quite a lot. And the concern that I have is stable coins are kind of like a Trojan horse of government
Mm-hmm.
control because it's a double-edged sword. If you have a stablecoin project like Circle bless a crypto project, let's for example say I create a Ethereum scaling solution, whatever, let's call it like Coin, what I call it, whatever it is, right? And then Circle gets on the phone and says, hey, listen, we really love your project. We are going to deploy $1 billion of USDC on your chain. How do you think my chain is going to do? It's going to do really well. Thank you very much, right? Because I've just gotten $1 billion of liquidity in the form of stablecoins on my chain. That's why Tron is still around, right? Because people are using stablecoins on Tron. So big stablecoin companies with their billions of dollars in, USDC or whatever stablecoin it is, can make or break a project. So when Ethereum went to proof of stake, there was a Ethereum proof of work competitor, the original chain that's like, well, fuck these guys. We are basically just going to stick to proof of stake. And there was like a small movement of people like, yes, we're just going to stick to the proof of work Ethereum and we're going to get away from the proof of stake Ethereum. And then Circle weighed in and they said, we're not going to have any USDC on the proof of work chain. So, the debate was ended right away. And it was, I think, it ended because Circle said we're just not going to support this alternative chain, the proof of work chain. We're going to support the proof of stake chain. And in the same way, they can, pick winners and losers, and they have direct regulatory oversight by the U.S. government. So by way of the private stablecoin projects, there is a mechanism where the government could choose the winners and losers in cryptocurrency, doing it through private stablecoin companies. So people are like really concerned about CBDCs, then they rail against them all the time. But I don't think people have actually really worked out the potential attack vector for centralized control via the private stablecoin route, because I think that's far more likely to happen than not.
Yeah, I mean, no, you hit it on the head, like with the term Trojan horse. It's and again, could it be well intentioned and then it just road to hell, paved 100%. But to your point, I could just totally see where it's a Trojan horse wrapper, where it's the same thing. It's okay, big deal. They own this one chain. Well, same thing if future companies, let's just say even Cardano or another company, maybe they get a fork and it goes from proof of stake to proof of work. Just some of the developers like, oh, this actually needs to be proof of work. Well, if there's like to your example, if Circle is basically state captured, someone in the Nancy Pelosi's of the world, the AOCs, whatever, Ted Cruz, they could just make a couple phone calls, and the crypto market, the open market, doesn't even get to decide. It's just, oh no, we're actually going to stay on this proof of stake chain, and you just dry up that liquidity. And again, is that 12, 24 months down the road? No, like but what's the old saying? Like someday came suddenly. It's I think I think I've said this before, but I think if you told people in 2010 that like, oh hey, in 10 years this Facebook thing with the cat memes and the poking your grandma, there's going to be legit evidence it's interfering with international elections, I think people would have laughed you out of the room. But it's like here we are, and you just said it too. Like one thing that disturbs me too is just like I've been chatting with people here and there. The amount of people that have no idea what the Twitter files are right now, I'm like, you should know what this is right now. It's like I don't know if you follow Matt Taibbi, but it's the reporting he's been doing lately is just spot on, because it's like you said, it's crazy how much government interference they had with Twitter, and then just the elections and everything that's just coming out right now. And to your point, if they can do that with Twitter and Facebook, you bet your ass they're going to do that with whatever stablecoin crypto companies come out or currently out and come out in the next 5 years. They're definitely not immune if Facebook and Twitter have to bow under the thumb.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, speaking of decentralized money in politics, another potential way cryptocurrency can disrupt politics is if you want to fund an opposition party in China, for example, and you go ahead and send them Monero, right, from the US, right? If you're Peter Thiel and you fucking hate China, which he does, right? And like, well, I see there's this opposition, so I'm just going to send them $1 billion, $1 billion worth of agitation that they could stir up in China. So, I think once this, becomes a bit more mainstream, you're going to start to see real government resistance and in real sort of like, conversations about how much can governments or how much should governments actually control this thing, right? Because if it's highly controlled, then the use case of sovereign decentralized money, that's thrown out the window because, well, now the government can control it, so it's not really decentralized and it's not really non-sovereign. And so you have to strike this balance between if the government steps in too much, then it's completely useless, and maybe that's what they want. But if they don't at all, then it could actually cause a lot of problems for, governments around the world, even US governments as well, right? I mean, imagine a day where the majority of drug trade is conducted not in the good old greenback, right, which is what it's conducted in now, but in, say, Monero or Bitcoin that is then put through some sort of a highly advanced mixer, for example, right? And how would the government feel about that, right? And would they attack the sort of drug industry, the drug cartels, or would they attack Bitcoin as enabling the problem? So I think there's going to be a real sort of collision between the cryptocurrency ethos and government control ethos. I don't even think that fight has even started yet. I don't even think we're in the first innings of that fight. I think that the government is just starting to gear up about thinking what they want to do with this thing. And unfortunately, they have a lot of evidence that, well, cryptocurrency is full of like scammers and criminals, which it is, right? it has attracted like the worst kind of people. So one example, there was recently this Bitcoin core dev. I forget his name, and it's probably not even fair to mention him, but he lost a bunch of Bitcoin recently. Did you
Yeah, the
follow this story on
200.
Twitter?
Yeah.
So he lost 200
Yeah. Sorry, go.
Bitcoin. So, but the story is not that he lost the Bitcoin, and we can talk about like, well, what does that actually mean in terms of self custody? Because we talked about that last time. But the real story is that this guy who lost 200 Bitcoin, worth $3.5 million today, right? So it was probably worth over 10 million during the peak. But this guy was routinely uh, asking for donations so he could keep on working selflessly on the Bitcoin core code, right? And he was like a OG programmer, so he was like a legit guy. He was respected in the community, but it turns out that he was basically just panhandling, asking for money from the crypto community when this guy was fucking loaded himself, right? So a core Bitcoin developer basically just is it a scam to be asking people for money when you already have a lot of money? I don't know if it's a scam or not, but it doesn't put you in a good light. And a lot of people were
Yeah.
complaining about this. I'm like, what the fuck was this guy asking money for? And he was also like, tweeting about, oh, I need a new phone, but this phone costs $300, like how am I going to afford it? And this is a guy who codes on Bitcoin, right? And this is the kind of people that we have in the industry. We have this guy, we have people like FTX, we have Do Kwon, we have like a long laundry list of people who, we just wish that they were in some other industry, right? Or if they were in some other industry, we would laugh at that industry. But they're in our industry, unfortunately, and there's a lot of people laughing at us, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, I think the government is going to leverage all of these bad actors that we've seen, and try to exert more control, right? And then it's really not clear to what extent the crypto community is unified in being able to provide pushback, right? Because it's definitely not unified.
No, definitely not. Yeah, I saw a little bit of that Bitcoin dev that lost his 200. Well, and same thing. I think the keyword was used. Stole. It was stolen. And I saw a little thread about it. So apparently he had some hot wallet where he was also running off his own server or this, that, and a third. And then not the wallet or hot wallet originally, but a couple years ago, he was like, "Oh, someone got into like my IP and messed with or my server and messed with this, that, and a third." And like just even let alone like a Bitcoin, but a couple hundred. Like the second anything like that would have happened, like let's say I even thought for like a hot second I had like let's just say 20 Bitcoin on one of my Trezor. If I even had an inkling that that Trezor was compromised, immediately get a new one, maybe even two more, split them up, and just destroy that old Trezor, or like I guess not destroy it, but just keep it. Just God forbid if someone sends me something.
You
But yeah,
could you could reset it. You don't have to destroy it. You could just reset it and to spin up a new seed phrase. You don't have to
That
destroy
was
the
my
hardware
point.
wallet.
It's just like even like just the paranoia. It's almost like some of the coin kits. They have a kill panel switch on the back. But same thing too. If someone's that paranoid, is like
Yeah.
that's one of the first things Satoshi talked about is like never get rid of a wallet. So obviously, like you said, you can new seed phrase, blah blah blah. But if just but my point is, it's like even me is just like someone that like I can't even like read C++ code. Like what like Bitcoin's written in. The fact that this guy was the original developer and he had like whatever over 100 Bitcoin on a hot wallet. Like part of me was
200.
just like, yeah, that's my point. It's like just something about it smelled fishy, and I was like, is this guy like just not care anymore in life? Is this just kind of one of those stories for clicks? Because I saw it a couple times, but I was just like I have nowhere near that amount. Like I told you, I'm like you. I can't even access most of my stack right now, and I am
Yeah.
nowhere near that amount. So when I saw that, I was like, how much of this is just like a Kim Kardashian nude get clicks type of headline? So it's if it's real, it's really unfortunate, but just part of it just smelled like kind of fake news to me. I don't know.
No, no, I think it's real because he's asking the FBI for help, right? So I think he's publicly like requesting the FBI to try to track down the crypto, which is kind of funny. He's asking the government to help
Yeah.
as he designs this decentralized money. He's going to ask the government to help him track down the decentralized money that he's lost. But it also raises another issue that we talked about in the last episode, which is how do you solve the problem of scaling self-custody, right? I mean, we all know not your keys, not your coins, all of that is great, right? But this is the risk that comes with that principle. If you're going to self-custody, then unless you know a whole lot about, great operational security and, you have everything locked down tight, you could really lose a lot of crypto. So, and this guy did. He lost millions of dollars. I mean, it could have been, it was probably worth way more, like in the peak of the bear market, bull market. It's really an unsolved question, and I had a lot of people. There was a lot. Udi, I mean, you mentioned Udi before. He was going on about how self-custody is actually not the best solution here. That if we want to scale crypto, that we have to come up with some sort of a custodial solution that people can trust, so that these sort of things don't happen. I mean, imagine if, people are like working their entire lives and, they have most of their life savings or a substantial portion of life savings in crypto. And I'm talking about 10 years in the future, right? So let's, for example, pretend Bitcoin is going to be $1 million. The debate is settled about whether Bitcoin is here to stay or not. It's a settled debate. But if someone, decides to self-custody 10 years down the road when Bitcoin is very valuable and they put most of their net worth into it because they feel like it's going to continue to do well, what happens if he or she loses their entire life savings because of one, mistake that they made in operational security? I mean, I don't think you can have money systems that are so fragile like that, in terms of, the cost of a user making a mistake. You need to have a better solution. And I talked about that before. I've thought about it a bit more, and I'm actually doubling down on this whole idea that if crypto is going to scale, we're going to need trusted custodial solutions. The whole not your keys, not your coins sounds really sexy, and it's good for some people, but I really do believe it's not good for most people. I know that CZ talks about this a lot, and he gets a lot of hate for it. Woody got a lot of hate for it when he talked about it as well. But I think it is the correct contrarian position at this point. I think they have it correct that if we're talking about billions of people, then you're going to have to come up with a custodial solution that just there's no two ways about it, and let the free market compete for your Bitcoin custody solutions. Let there be lots of
Mm-hmm.
competitors. Let there not just be a Fidelity and a Grayscale, sorry, Fidelity or BlackRock that holds everyone's assets, right? Let there be 100 different custodial solutions so that you can spread them around and they can all compete with each other for fees and security. I think this will be a solved problem in the next few years. I think there's probably going to be a crypto company that emerges, and all they do is custody. They don't do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something we're going to probably see in the next cycle.
Yeah, like I was definitely one of those. I remember, yeah, I think it was what, the 2 weeks ago, our last episode, we were talking about this, and even at the end of the episode, I was still kind of like on top of my hill. I was like, nah, not your keys, not your coins, um, because my thing is like, it's like, well, it's like 2008. You can only trust AIG to work until they can't. But for to your point, part of the reason AIG went under, instead of just kind of being an insurance company, they were also kind of basically doing illegal investing shit while also trying to be the insurance company, which obviously, if you're, that's like, for example, fiduciary, they're basically legally obligated to care more about your money than their profits. That's why they're a fiduciary. So to your point, when last week we had this conversation, I was just like, I don't know, man. It's like, not your keys, not your coins, the 2008 blow up. But to your point, it's like, let's just even take a low number. It's probably going to be more, but even 25% of people are never going to want to do self custody. That's a shit ton of people, like you said, when you're talking about hundreds of millions, billions of people. And then what you just said, like, I am starting to open up to the idea more. It's just, even in North America, it's just like with anything else. If we had 100 custodial services out there and that's all they did, well, all the, for lack of a better word, bad actors, and obviously there's probably gonna be some internal people who steal shit here and there, they get fired, sued. But if there's 100 of them, they're all gonna compete. They're gonna be pretty damn secure, because it's like, hey, if we don't get our shit, ABC custodial right down the road is gonna take our lunch money. And to your point, it's not gonna happen overnight, but it's, I think the more we do talk about this, and that's why I like conversations like this. I do open up to it more, but I do think, how do I word this? How do I word this? We still need to have the not your keys, not your coins movement going. And then, almost not to be corny, but we almost have a fork where it's, let's just say, the custodial service is C, right? And if not your keys, not your coins is A. We need to have some weird B point segue, for lack of a better word, and then we go to that. Because the one thing that would, how do I word this, maybe concern me, is if everyone just getting right into the space, they had no experience ever doing self custody. Because let's just say they had ABC group they were trusting, and like how you had some stuff with BlockFi, or where'd you have money, you got concerned and you pulled it it was in
BlockFi.
Terra or
It was
okay,
BlockFi.
so you got concerned and you pulled it. Well, if people get into the space and all they know how to do is just trust a third party,
Yeah.
well, if a news report comes out, they're like, "Oh shit, I've always been trusting Bobby's custodial services. I don't know how to do my own self storage." Then you get like an '08 run on the bank type of thing.
Mm.
So it's I definitely hear you. I think it's just educating people on the options, and the more we talk about this, I do agree with you now a little bit more that it to get those mass numbers we're talking about. It's something that's going to have to at least be a quarter, pillar in the whole infrastructure. I just don't want it to be just like oh wait, it becomes the only thing. I think we still do need to teach people how to not your keys, not your coins, because the same thing. All these custodials are going to be ran by people. Breaking news: people fuck up all the time. So it's just again like 2008, you can only trust a third party until you can't. But it's yeah, I guess just to finish off on, I do after our last talk and then like talking about it now, it's something I am starting to think about more. Where it's like, okay, yeah, to next 5 or 10 years, that's going to be a major upgrade we're going to have to do to definitely onboard more people. So I'll agree with that.
I'm sympathetic to the whole not your keys, not your coins because it perfectly encapsulates the central ethos of cryptocurrency is that unlike the US dollar, you can fully own and self-custody this other thing called Bitcoin. You can't do that with the US dollar, right? I mean, I guess you could have cash in your hand, but with Bitcoin, like you have it in your wallet and nobody can take it away from you, right? And so that whole last part, nobody can take it away from you unless you give them your keys is that whole anti-government, we control the money, the government doesn't control the money, so fuck the government, and you better keep your own coins because you can and you should. And so I think that's where that sort of not your keys, not your coin energy comes from. Because if you understand what that means, then baked into that understanding is the distrust of government. It is the idea of self-sovereignty. It is the idea of self-custody, your own money, the idea that no one can take this away from you. All of that is encapsulated in the phrase "not your keys, not your coins." And so I think people sort of shout that from the rooftops because there's an entire philosophy behind it as well. So I'm sympathetic to why people say it. I'm just thinking about it logistically. It's like that's fine if it works great for you, but if we're thinking about mass adoption, then I mean think again about mass adoption. The vast majority of the people in the world are perfectly happy with government controlling their life, right? So unless that
Yeah, COVID
changes,
showed it. Yeah,
yeah, unless that changes, which I don't think it's going to, because the vast majority of humans like to be led, right? They're not natural leaders. They're not naturally independent. The vast majority are very happy to put their money in a bank, right? So you're not going to change human nature, right? I think that's a human nature thing. Uh, and so for that reason, if you tell some 70-year-old grandma who lives in Croatia, oh, did you know that you can self-custody your Bitcoin? I mean, she's like, what the hell are you talking about? Put this thing in the bank where it belongs, right? Is something, she might say. Because that's just how they think, right? And maybe in the distant future, private companies have come up with custodial solutions so that, you have complete peace of mind. There's a 100-year-old company that's been custodying Bitcoin forever, and they're super reliable, and they're insured as well, and everything's on chain, and you can trust them, blah 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 blah. Once those sort of companies come along, and those companies also maybe structure themselves in a way that they are not able to be captured by government regulation, so that in some way they are separated from the government. Maybe that's how this self-custody thing is going to end up working, is that you are going to trust this company, but this company is going to be incorporated on some territory that is outside U.S. jurisdiction. So the U.S. government tells it to do anything, it's just going to tell it to go fuck itself. And because what is it going to do? Are you going to sanction me? How? You don't control the money, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's
Outside of
living
like
in a
if you take it to Bermuda, like outside of sending ships and guns, yeah, it's
exactly.
which obviously isn't out of the realm of possibility, but it's at least for the next 5, 10 years, we're still that weird pet rock to the government. So it's like
Yeah.
to your point, there's realistic and reasonable like workarounds for that in the medium to short term.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, let's see. I mean, I think I wouldn't even be surprised if something like Jack Dorsey's company, The Block, came up with a custodial solution. I mean, I know Coinbase is doing it as well. It wouldn't be surprising if someone like, Google one day came up with it, or, all these other companies, right? Because they would take a little bit of the profits as well for, not profits, but they would take a fee as well. they may be holding their own, crypto, the currency, and they may come up with their own sort of custodial solution. So I think those are all things that will probably come down the pipeline in the next few years, but we need to crawl out of this bear market first.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, no one's even thinking about like we are right now. It's, oh, should I do not my keys, not my coins? Should I trust Bobby? People are like, I have rent due in 2 days, and this FTX shit was bad enough. Now Gemini's blowing up, and it's yeah. Luckily, I'm at a position right now where I'm like you. I really do enjoy the bear markets because all the gurus go away, all the
Yeah,
white noise goes away, and even though like we were talking about, Cameron Winklevoss was kind of flinging shit on Twitter. The last, I don't know, maybe dozen times I've gone on Twitter, there's been some really good threads because the people that are on Twitter, they're not looking to, hashtag Doge to the moon. They're trying to do Twitter files, or someone's having a debate like we're doing, and it's like a thread where it's like intellectuals can actually like comment and go through it and blah blah blah. So it's yeah, the conversations like this obviously most people aren't concerned about because a lot of people just lost their shirt, and now we're still debating it, if we're in a recession or if we're going into one, what inning is it? But it's like we were saying, it's if more conversations happen like this over the next 12 to 36 months, it's if there's a 24 or 25 bull market. Obviously you can't save everybody, but if we can even save 10% more people from whatever's going to be the next BlockFi, whatever going to be the next Sheeb, Doge, AMC, if we can just even get 10% people out of that, then their next go around they get 10% people. And it's like the old saying, if you see farther than the person behind you, is because you stand on the shoulder of giants. So it's,
mm,
I remember when I got into the space, the Cody and Udis were saying all this stuff, and I'm like, oh, whatever, boomers, that's stupid, I'm gonna go buy Tron and retired. And now I'm like, you know what, I probably should have listened to them and only put like $100 in Tron. But I lost like a grand or so on Tron, it burned. And it's I remember you were saying a while ago like how I'm one of the calmer people in the group recently. It's like, well, I lost my ass in 2017, 2018, which at the time now could like get me a nice like a used car if it was all converted back to Bitcoin. But I tell people like getting my ass burned like that was kind of the price of admission, or it's kind of like my
yeah.
bachelor's degree of crypto. It's like you can reach it, but I tell people once you put your money, whether it's into bonds, stocks, crypto, when you lose hard-earned money you have like busted your ass for, especially when it's like maybe a month's income, whatever
Mm.
stupid shit you did, you're gonna remember that till the day you die. Like I
Yeah.
remember the day I realized like I lost my ass on Golem, Tron, I can't remember right now, and I might have bought some of Mise Go, but I remember the day like I lost my ass on that shit, and I did the math in my head. I literally was I remember I was on my grandma's living room watching the hockey game. I got a bead of sweat going because I was like, that's a month's income I just lost. And like I can laugh about it now too, but at the time, like I literally had to go outside and like I couldn't breathe. But like I can remember that to this day. I just told you that story, so it's back to my point, we can have these conversations so that we can try to help people. But it's like the old saying, it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. But
Mm.
same thing, having conversations like this about custodial, not your keys, not your coins, we can have them for hours and they get a little bit mundane, but I think in the big picture of everything, they're needed.
Yeah, I know. Well, on that high note, telling us about how he lost money on Tron, I think we'll call it.
Back in Vietnam, yeah.
All right, man. Great talk as always, dude. Let's do this again, hopefully sometime next week.
No, definitely, Atif. Good talk as always, brother. Stay safe, and whenever you're back in town, I'll definitely try to catch you to meet up.
All right, dude. Thanks, man.